Okay, let's roll. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's teleseminar, which is brought to you by E3 Marketing in St. Louis, Missouri. Our purpose for existing in relationship with the Nelson Nash Institute is to help people discover and keep more of their own money, help them discover the flow of their money, where their money is flowing out of their control, and what can be done to help more money flow into their control. Our topic for today is generational planning. My name is Tom Mickler. I'll be your facilitator. I'll be joined today by Robbie Shilley. Robbie's a veteran of thousands of knee-to-knee appointments with clients and is going to share some insight into some of the finer points as far as generational planning is concerned. So when we're talking about generational planning, we're talking about ways to help a client keep more of their own money, but not just themselves, but for generations to come as well, too. It's become glaringly obvious to us that a lot of people are led somewhat unwittingly into giving up control of a lot of their money to the government and banks. And then when we need that money, it isn't necessarily readily available. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how to create a wealth system within a family. We're going to talk about some of the psychology behind transfer of assets as well, too. So without any further hesitation, I'd like to introduce Mr. Robbie Shilley to today's call. Robbie, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Tom. Thanks for having us.
Sure. Robbie, before we get into the topic of today's discussion, I was wondering if you could spend a little bit of time just giving us your background as a financial advisor.
Sure. Started back in 2003 at a big brokerage house in St. Louis. Worked in their back office for approximately 3+ years. Thought I wanted to do more, didn't know what that was going to be. Joined a Maritime as part of their team in 2006. Been with them ever since. And, just that sense of community to have others around you. I was a young advisor in my mid-20s. Did not feel comfortable going and talking to someone about their retirement at that young of age, but I felt very comfortable doing it when I had a team of people around me. Mm-hmm. Meaning that if I didn't know the answer, I felt very comfortable saying, hey, I don't know, but we can find out. Been going on several meetings. Starting out, I wasn't that, our model is not to send someone out all on their own. It's more of, hey, join us, sit on several hundred, if not 1,000 meetings, and then you can go out and work with people, almost like an apprentice relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Robbie, you mentioned an important word there, community. And I do want to make mention as far as, again, the reason that E3 Marketing exists and the reason that the partnership exists with the Nelson Nash Institute, as I said, is to help people learn how to take more control of their own money. I mentioned that a lot of us unwittingly send money out of our control. So in a larger picture here, I think our ultimate goal would be to help bring some transformation to this industry, more of a client focus as far as what's going to work in the best interest in the client. And I think the thing that we've really landed on is the importance of taking a full financial picture in a process that we call a financial discovery. So that's really going to become the heart of the matter. But again, the overall goal would be to bring some transformation to the industry while building a 10% following to help try to bring about some change in overall monetary policy in the country so that people have a better understanding of how to retain more of their own money. And the way we want to do that, though, is by building a community of like-minded professionals working in a cooperative manner. And another play on that word as far as community is the integrated resource network. You mentioned the Maritime, which worked with public school teachers in Missouri, and Mark Benson's creation. And one of the first things that Mark did also was to implement an integrated resource network around advisors to really flesh out every need or meet every need that a client might have. So the word community is really important here. And I know we talked about it a lot last teleseminar. But let's move into today's topic. We're talking about generational planning. And I think, Robbie, my background is I'm a counselor. You're an advisor, so you're going to have a little bit different insight into this, obviously. But, in some ways our fields cross here because we're talking about the psychology of money, often is the case. And when we're talking about a transfer of assets within a generation, I think for a lot of people, the mindset is, well, I'm going to leave some money to my kids. I'm going to work hard, and my hope is to be able to leave some money for my kids to better their situation in life, and kind of ends there. But can you give us some insight into what generational planning has come to mean within our structure?
Sure. Maybe if we back up a step, all we're talking about here is continuing to go a layer deeper and continue to go further when we get to that next layer. One of the first things that we will do, and you mentioned this, is discovering a complete financial picture. And we'll bring one up, and you guys on the call have probably seen this before, either at our event or maybe Drew or Mark or someone has shared this with you. But what we have is a financial picture that we have to have a discussion about someone's cash flow and all the different assets involving their financial picture. And we'll have it up here in a second just to share that. Now, when we first started talking about generational planning, I kind of maybe initially wanted to dive into that. Hey, let's jump straight into the discussion of that generational planning. But what you have to do is, first of all, discover their financial picture. This piece here will allow you to have conversations regarding their investments, their cash flow, their taxes, their financing. You're continuing to bring value. The generational conversation is just an extension of that value creation. What I mean is, once we have this and you're continuing to have your quarterly, annual, semi-annual reviews with the client, depending on their needs, clients really enjoy talking about their family. And, we didn't always do this. This is something that we've really honed in on in the last several years. But if you ask someone about their family, they're going to talk about them. They're going to share the names. And Mark Benson discovered a strategy, or mainly just an organizational tool that just categorizes and puts those names in a hierarchy. It's nothing special. We shared it at a past event. It's just a piece of paper, 3 lines on it. And you can use whatever organizational tool you want to use, but just to organize those names. And as you're organizing those names, people are going to tell you certain things about them. And then at the proper time, the next step would likely be, hey, have you guys thought about any estate planning? And, that's a key piece to keep things, in the right hands, maybe out of probate, going with the right purpose to an heir. So the next step would, after having the conversation about family names, is to bring in that estate attorney. Tom, do you want to jump in anywhere on that? I mean, definitely want to go beyond that conversation, but anything you want to make a comment on there?
Well, I think that one of the things that we want to do today is we want to make mention of some of the authors that have impacted our thinking along these lines. And the first person that I'm going to talk about is James Hughes Jr. in the book, The Cycle of the Gift, where it was an eye-opener for us. I think it was Andy Winehouse, our attorney, that pointed Hughes's work out to us, and the Chinese proverb of rags to rags in 3 generations. And what this means is that if a conversation doesn't take place regarding that transfer of assets, then most likely that money will be gone in 3 generations.
Absolutely.
Now, I know you also have a book that you wanted to talk about today, What Would the Rockefellers Do? Garrett Gunderson, I believe, is the author of that book. And another resource that we'll touch on today also is a guy by the name of Mr. Dennis Jaffe in California. So we're going to talk a little bit about the psychology of that. But, Robbie, the 3 lines that you talked about, very simple, but it creates a pictorial for the client. And then we're able to emphasize, if these generations don't come together in some way, shape, or form, then that money is, there's a bit of a risk to it, because that transfer has a particular spirit about it. There's a particular energy about that transfer. And if there is no discussion, I'm using the word transfer, the difference between a transfer and a gift, a transfer can be more of a cold passing on, so to speak, without a discussion, without that emotion as far as what that money has meant, what it's taken to earn that money, if that money was earned or if it's inherited, as opposed to a gift. And Robbie, you and I have sat in on meetings with families, and you get to that emotional point because we're talking about the meaning of their money. And if that next generation does not have some type of insight into what that meaning is and what that spirit is, then that rags to rags proverb really can become a reality for a lot of families.
Yeah. The conversation now, I think, will go a couple different ways here, Tom. One, I think you're really good at talking about the psychology of the gift, whether it's a transfer or a way to enhance an heir's life. Another way that we're going to look at this is to build a referral system. And maybe to jump into that latter part first is that, all of us advisors will have referrals within a family. We've had, you work with a gentleman or a spouse, or, you're talking with them. They might bring in their kid here or bring in a nephew here. But if you've got their financial picture and you continue to talk about their family, more times than not, we're discovering the last several years is at the review meetings, just by discovering their cash flow, there's going to be opportunities to redirect some of that cash flow for reasons other than just accumulating wealth in their nature. That might be doing something on a grandchild, doing something for a son or daughter. And maybe it's not something that's going to relate directly to something that's going to drive revenue. Maybe it's, hey, how's your son or daughter financing their car? Maybe you can enhance their life by doing something like that. Another way is, a lot of times, we'll go, if we've got that financial picture and the generational planning sheet right there, we'll talk about ways to enhance generations below them by going out and implementing a product on a son, daughter, niece, nephew, grandson, granddaughter. So that's very important to our referral system. And that's something that we're focusing on lately, is just by organizing the names in a hierarchy and continue to have conversation, that is really building our referral system. It happened twice this week already. But Tom, I want to go back to the spirit of the gift and more the psychology, because that's where I think I really learned a lot from you because of your background. And John Moriarty and I were recently reading a book. He actually shared it with me, and it's called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And it's by Michael Isom and Garrett Gunderson. And boy, a really good point in there that he talks about is, inherited money does not change a person's relationship with money. It is actually going to enhance that relationship, meaning a spender is going to spend their inheritance. A saver is going to save it. An investor is probably going to invest it. So, Tom, if I could maybe flip it back to you to talk about some of the psychology behind that, the psychology of money and the psychology of inheritance has really allowed me to deepen that conversation that we're having with our clients.
I think, Robbie, what happens in a lot of families is that might be the first time they've actually talked openly about their assets. And again, that's going back to Hughes's quote that the importance of having that conversation. Everybody ascribes a different meaning to money. It represents security, it represents survival, it represents success, it might represent identity. So the fact that you're opening that door might be the first time that it's happened for clients. And those aren't easy waters to navigate. So I think just some of the questions, and you mentioned a few of them, can help to stimulate that conversation and expand that awareness, because every family culture is completely unique to itself. So I grew up in a particular environment where, I watched my dad stress over money. We never ever talked about it. I grew up with the belief that the institutions would take care of us, that they're designed to do that. That was some of my psychology, and being exposed to the advisors of a maritime, E3 wealth management, E3 marketing, I certainly have learned an awful lot about that. But it's the appreciation and the importance of finding out what does money mean in this family. And then also understanding the difference between acquired wealth and inherited wealth and how that impacts personality and development. So, one of the points that we were talking about beforehand, and I don't know that we'll necessarily delve into this that much, but how someone that's inherited money, that's come through generations of inheritance, often has a tremendous fear about losing that money. So that's a different mindset as far as how that money is going to be handled. Compared to someone that worked diligently, blood, sweat, and tears to build their wealth system and the modeling that they passed on to their offspring. So, and then the effect on personality. So maybe what we're doing today is we're creating more questions for advisors. And I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about the event that we're going to have in just a few weeks here in St. Louis, because this is a topic that we'll cover in much more depth, yourself and myself and others in attendance too. But the importance of, again, just understanding that there is a psychology in each culture, and you have to be willing to ask those questions. So, Robbie, from your point of view, do you run into a lot of situations with clients, with families, where there is a reluctance to talk about money?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm an amateur when it comes to talking about, the counseling and the questions that you can ask to go a layer deeper. So, I'm very fortunate to have you to, I'm not going to understand everything that you know, Tom, but I think, just hearing you talk about this gives me ideas on what to ask certain clients. Mm-hmm. And, one thing I kind of relate back to is we were sitting with a client and, you kept asking questions, go a layer deeper. And the gentleman's name, we'll call him Tom. Probably not call him Tom because your name's Tom. We'll call him Drew. He said, hey, Drew, what is it that you want to happen when this money goes to the next generation? I'll never forget his answer. It was, I just want my kids to take a few thousand a year and go on a family vacation. And I thought, wow, I never would have went there, because as an advisor, we're so focused on, hey, numbers, result, let's plan this out. But this guy was in another stratosphere. He was thinking, hey, the money's going to go there. This is the emotional part. This is the part that I want to pass on to my family. Mm-hmm. Also, if we kind of go back, traditional planning is, collect assets, do the beneficiaries, the estate planning documents in place, and bam, it's over. Hey, you don't need to revisit it. But we've learned, keep revisiting that, keep revisiting those names in the family. Grandkids will come into play, nieces, nephews come into play. That needs to be revisited. Daughter gets married. Maybe the husband or wife is concerned about their relationship. Well, there's things they can do back in those legal documents that can eliminate that fear. People aren't always aware of that. I wasn't personally aware of that until, sitting on several hundred meetings with our estate planning attorney. So having that conversation, continuing to bring value, just opens up so many more opportunities with a referral system. There's I want to bring in my daughter to talk about this. It's just really enhanced our referral system and our value creation with our clientele. Now, we're not going to have this generational conversation with everyone. I don't want to come across by saying that. But as you continue to bring value in the financial discovery or financial picture, this will come into play almost as second nature. And before you know it, heck, one family will create a half a dozen referrals potentially. Yeah.
Again, we're talking about the meaning of money and just some of the basic questions that we'll ask. And once we've discovered how that wealth was accumulated, excuse me, finding out what it took to acquire that money and the values that were developed, realized, experienced. And then, we're not saying that the giver is mandating how the money should be used by the receiver, but we are asking the giver to share what the money has meant to them, how, again, as I said, how they came by it, and what they would like to see that money do for the future generations to come. Another quote in the meeting was, or in the meeting, I'm sorry, in the book was, this gift can land like a meteor in a person's life, in the receiver's life. So we've also had experience in talking with the receivers of money. And, that's a conversation unto itself as well, too. Because, some people want to honor that gift. They want to make sure that they're upholding what the gift means coming from the giver. So the bottom line here is that there is truly a psychology around that gift, and there is a spirit. Again, there's an energy, and it's just asking some simple basic questions to get people to start to talk about what the money has meant. As you said, Robbie, it's not something that you're going to talk about necessarily in every meeting, but wouldn't it also be a way to do a financial discovery? Because when we talk about that financial discovery, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit more about that. There's not one way to do that, correct?
Absolutely. If you come to the event, you'll notice that Mark Benson will do a financial discovery different than John Moriarty, who does it different than me. The end result is you're going to have a complete financial picture that Drew showed, a while ago. Something else, Tom, that you touched on there is the recipient's emotion towards that inheritance. And, for a lot of people, there's a lot of stress when they inherit money because they don't want to disappoint someone in the family and disrespect that money. And something that, we've noticed along the way is by collecting that financial discovery, and when that recipient receives that money, a lot of times we'll go back and, talk about what their parents did or whoever left them that money, what they did in that financial picture. That will lead to conversations about what they might do. And really what they'll see is that what they're doing a lot of times is just a continuation of what their mother, their father, their grandparent did with that money as well. And boy, that is a key thing to show a beneficiary that, hey, what you're doing is a continuation of what your mom or dad did or what your spouse did. We recently had this conversation with a gentleman who lost his wife recently at a young age. And, a lot of emotions going on, not knowing what to do with the money. And they have a couple kids, and just showing him, hey, what you're looking to do here is just a continuation of what you and your wife did to extend this to your kids and potential grandkids as well. So that conversation there and having that laid out simply by having the financial discovery and the generational conversation piece, having those two there just to show it's a continuation of what they did, that was, in my opinion, very powerful to share with that recipient.
Robbie, you mentioned that, we've sat in on meetings together, and one of the things that I found helpful for me, and hopefully there was some value for you, is I'll watch you with a client and you're gathering the information. You're gathering the numbers in a way. And I've asked you, okay, you're paying attention to that. What else are you paying attention to? Because there's a lot that's happening in the meeting non-verbally.
Yeah.
And, we're asking people to talk about a relationship, their relationship to money. It's one of the most difficult relationships we have, and we've talked about that a number of times in these teleseminars. So you're going into territory that, you're getting people out of their comfort zone in some ways. And I would imagine that for you as an advisor, that it's somewhat of a moment-to-moment experience in reading that client.
Yeah.
And reading that nonverbal behavior. And then also, would you say that heightens your awareness of your own nonverbal behavior and how you're coming across to them? Because they're there because they trust you, hopefully, but still, to take some of the steps that you're asking them to take, they've got to have that comfort level. Yeah. So do you find yourself that while you're paying attention to the information that you're gathering, there are other things that also have to be attended to. And again, I'm putting those in more of a nonverbal realm too.
Absolutely, Tom. And at first, that was getting me out of my comfort zone because I was getting the client out of their comfort zone. So, here at the table, we had that everybody at the table was out of their comfort zone. But a lot of times that'll lead to great conversations. That's something that is not taught; it's more caught. A lot of the veteran people on here can probably relate to that, Tom, maybe even better than I can. That they set in on maybe more meetings than I have, and they hone into those nonverbals. But as we sit there and have that conversation with them, and we're taught to talk about numbers and the financial plan, but there is so much more to it than that. There are the nonverbals. There are the certain things maybe the spouse does, and I don't know how to say to focus on that, but you just being aware of it, continuing to focus on that, continuing to ask questions, listen better, take notes. A lot of times the best thing to do is sit there and shut up and jot a note down. There might be some awkward silence, but if you just explain, hey, I want to capture something here, guys. I just don't want to forget this moment right now.
So it sounds like you're giving yourself more permission to step out of gathering not only the numbers, but the way you're asking the client to tell me your story.
Yeah.
And I want to lean on that word a little bit, that word story, because that encapsulates or that brings into the picture much more than just the financial aspect of their life. Tell me more about your family. Tell me more about your culture, whatever word would be comfortable for you, but you're really asking permission. And for me, when I came into this organization, as a counselor, I feel like that hour that I spend with a client it's a sacred hour. I'm honored that they would share that information with me. And I feel that the things that we talk about are important because a lot of what we're talking about, they're not talking about out on the street with just anybody. These are some of the more intimate details of their life. And I quickly gained an appreciation for what it is that you do, or Mark does, or Jenny does, or Bruce does, John, everybody else in the organization. That's a sacred time. It really is. And if our mindset is such, if we can approach that meeting in that particular way, that's the shift I think that we're talking about here when we're talking about more of creating more value for clients. Yeah. And I think the advisor, while it might be uncomfortable early on, to continue to give themselves that permission, maybe to ask that question in that way, tell me your story, not just your financial story, but what else feeds into that? What else has been significant in the history of the family that you think might be helpful for me to know? Because as a layperson, so to speak here, I would think it would be important if I'm meeting with you as an advisor, Robbie, that you know more of my story. You know what money means to me so that you can best position what I have.
Yeah, and once again, if we revert back to what we're really doing here, it's going a level deeper, and it's going farther with that within that level. John Moriarty and I were actually traveling last week, and John works with a lot of entrepreneurs, and he said, Robbie, entrepreneurs always want to tell their story. They love it. What business are they in? How did they get this business to where it's at? What worked? What didn't work? And really, families enjoy doing that too. Hey, I had this job. That was great. This didn't work. Now, it's not going to be something you maybe get into in the opening meeting, but we're throwing a lot of things out there. But it's really about picking the right time to ask that. Now, talking with John, entrepreneurs, that's might be one of the first questions you ask them. Hey, tell me your story, because they love to share stories about that. Myself, I don't work with a lot of entrepreneurs. That's something that John will do, and he'll probably talk a lot about that at our event with some of his entrepreneurial clients that might be there as well. So getting someone to tell their story, getting someone to talk about their family is really pretty simple. And once you get them going, you sit back and kind of shut up. Listen to them, pay attention, remember their names in their family. That's where that hierarchy sheet really comes into play, that the generational planning sheet. Does this take more time? Will you be able to wrap up a review meeting in 30 to 60 minutes? No. It is going to take more time, but the more time that it takes, we're discovering is a really good investment of our time that will lead to a greater and greater referral source, because now mom and dad will say, hey, son or daughter, I'm bringing you in to see Bruce Wayner and Mark Benson next week, or I'm bringing you in to see Vinny Dasher and John Moriarty next week. And they're going to listen. It's going to happen. They're going to tell their friends, colleagues, and neighbors that. And that referral is coming from a trusted source. And as all of us know on this call, getting a trusted referral, that is key to our success and into our future as well.
I know that we've mentioned the event more than once here. In a moment, I'm going to ask Jenny Dasher to join us to talk a little bit more in detail about the upcoming event, again, held in St. Louis, November 15th, 16th, and 17th. And I don't mean to beat this into the ground, but this piece here about the story, and that creating a referral system, because if a family's sitting with you and they've shared some of that with you, again, they've brought you into more of the fold, so to speak, and they are much more likely, I would think, to want to bring other people to you within the family because you know their story. And probably a very different experience for some families if they've sat with other advisors that have never gone there before. Robbie, just one last item I want to touch on before we bring Jenny in. I'm guessing that you've had experiences. Well, I'll back up. At the top of the call, I said that I think for a lot of givers, someone that's going to gift assets to the next generation, I think the common thinking is, I'm going to pass it along and hopefully it's going to make their life better. And that's where it ends there. But if we talk for a moment about creating a wealth system within a family, and I'm guessing that sometimes it's helping a family understand their own culture and maybe also understanding, I'll use these words that we've used before because I think they're helpful, whether we're operating out of a scarcity mindset or a mindset of abundance. And for a lot of people, I think giving that gift, there's not necessarily recognition of we can create an ongoing wealth system here. Would you agree?
Absolutely. With those 3 lines on a sheet of paper, that might be the tip of the iceberg in our conversation. The dollars that you're going to have are ultimately going to go down to this generation below you. Yes or no? Yeah. Do you think there'll be dollars there that'll go down? Yeah. What do you want to see happen when the next generation receives it? Or is there anything you want to do for them today that maybe they haven't done? It will allow them, with the proper planning, to continue to cascade dollars down from generation to generation. Whether that's with a gift, whether that's with specially designed life insurance to the next generation, whether that's with a conversation on what you want them to do when they do receive it. You want them to have the family vacation. And what it all comes back to is the financial discovery and their cash flow. Having that conversation about there's going to be assets that go down, and what do you want to see happen with that, and how can we enhance the next generation if that's what you want to do. Some people may not want to do that. Hey, I don't want to have this conversation with them. I just want it to show up like a meteor one day. Hey, that's fine. If it shows up like a meteor, it might destroy their world. It's like a lottery winner, in the words of James Hughes Jr. So, getting back to what we've said several times now, we all have clients that will refer us to their family members. Absolutely. And we've had that before we focused on this. But this conversation that you've kind of introduced us to through James Hughes Jr., through reading other authors as well, Garrett Gunderson, is that this is going to continue to enhance our referral system based on the information that we have by the client telling their story sharing their family members' information with us capturing that and continuing to revisit that after the estate planning work is done. Because if you keep revisiting it, life events will happen, and that will lead to more and more opportunities.
I'm going to bring Jenny on in a minute, and just to summarize that, that process of the financial discovery, cash flow, and then ultimately helping that family start to maintain more control of their own money. And again, that's our overarching purpose, and why we exist is to help people control more of their own money as opposed to it unwittingly flowing out of their control. So, and again, I've mentioned the event a number of times today, so I'm going to ask Jenny Dasher to join us right now and share with us some of the agenda items. If you're on the call and you've attended the event before, I'll ask Jenny to highlight some of the differences in this particular event compared to our first two. Jenny, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Just want to go over briefly some of the stuff we're going to cover at the live event. It's pretty different than the last couple that we've had, so I think Drew is going to share the agenda with you so you can check it out as I'm speaking. But on the first day, Tuesday, November 15th, there'll be the typical registration and continental breakfast. At 9 a.m., we're gonna get rolling right away, and John Moriarty and Mark Benson are going to share the evolution of where the Freedom Advisor Crusade has come, how we're different now than we were a year ago, and so on. We're also going to talk a lot about the community we're looking to build with entrepreneur professionals, and we're going to talk about the scorecard, which is going to be something we reference several times throughout the event. Then in the afternoon on that day, we're going to have 2 breakout sessions. One of them is going to be facilitated by Bruce Wayner and John, and that's really going to focus on the past, present, and future of the mindsets of the economy. And then in another room will be Mark and Robbie. Robbie's been on today, obviously, and that's going to talk more about, they're going to engage the people more in how to attract more clients, how to get more people to call you, probably doing some work on the financial discovery piece and some other thinking exercises that you could take back and implement right away. Then we'll have a little bit of time in the evening there to kind of recap, maybe work on your action plan a little bit. I don't know how you guys are, but for me, if I'm spending a day soaking up a lot of great information, sometimes it helps to have a few minutes to kind of refocus and put a plan of action on, put the pencil to paper, pretty much. Then we're going to have a fun little welcome reception that night. And for me, sometimes that's a great way to cap off the day, and we'll all get to know each other a little bit on more of an informal basis. Then on the next day, Wednesday, there'll be continental breakfast again right there in the hotel. We'll have a general session where we are going to be lucky enough to spend a couple hours with Todd Langford in Truth Concepts. If you haven't heard Todd, or if you have heard Todd, you know what you're in for. It's unbelievable information. And if you haven't heard Todd, go ahead and look him up, Todd Langford and Truth Concepts. You'll learn all kinds of information that basically proves a lot of information that we'll be talking about at the training. So Todd is wonderful. And then after that, John Moriarty is actually going to take some of the information that Todd shares and show our attendees how you can put that into action with clients. And he'll have some case studies and some examples. Then you'll have a little break for lunch on your own again. We'll come back for a large group, and Robbie and Tom are going to talk some more about generational planning. You'll probably see some actual client case studies, how we've helped more than just one generation. And then in the afternoon, this part's new and really exciting to us, is that we're going to have several of our most trusted resources available in the room. So we're going to have folks from the NNI and IBC. We're also going to have Todd Langford with Truth Concepts. We're going to have Kim Butler with the Prosperity Economics Movement. We're going to have Ben Stellino from Strategic Coach. We're going to have people from here in St. Louis representing IES and also E3 Marketing. And really the purpose, I think, of that portion of the event is going to be kind of an informal chance for those of you attending to kind of ask these entrepreneurs what it is about their business and what they have to offer that can help you with your business. We believe that any entrepreneur at some point in their career would be really wise to utilize or at least research one, if not all of these resources. And really, it's just we're all working together to kind of push this crusade forward. And again, we just feel like these are probably the best resources any entrepreneur could and should connect with. So that's going to be something new, and we're really excited about that. Then we're going to have a general session to cap off the evening where John and Mark and Tom, I mentioned this we're going to cover it on Tuesday. We're going to talk about the scorecard and your mindset and how you're feeling after Wednesday as opposed to maybe Tuesday morning. So that's going to be really a chance for people that are tending to kind of look in the mirror and say, okay, here's kind of where I am. All right. And then we may go out as a group to dinner that night. We may not. We'll just kind of see what happens. And then on Thursday, again, we'll have breakfast, a general welcome and recap. And then we get to listen to Nelson Nash share what he wants to say. He's going to speak from the heart, which for those of you that know Nelson or have heard him speak, that's about the only way he does it. So that will be wonderful. And then Carlos Lara and Bob Murphy are going to be joining John Moriarty, and we're going to talk about how Federal Reserve and Austrian economics can benefit you and your business. We've had Bob and Carlos before. This time we might focus a little bit just about how it impacts each entrepreneur a little bit more. And again, that'll be some panel discussion time, opportunities for you guys to talk to Bob and Carlos directly. Then we have another new speaker this year, Jimmy Vreeland. We're really excited to have Jimmy. Jimmy and John are going to talk about how you can utilize real estate and life insurance together and how that can build additional wealth for people. Some new information that we had not had available before. And then we'll have lunch. We're going to actually have some of St. Louis' finest here at lunch that day. You can't tell you what those are unless you join us. And then in the afternoon, we're going to review the scorecard again, kind of see where you are after day 3. We'll have some time to kind of create your plan of action, and then we'll send you on your way. So that's kind of where we are. It's what we have built. Hopefully, if you guys have any questions about that, Drew Drew will make sure he posts the website and all that. So you let us know if you have any questions. That's it, Tom.
Very good, Jenny. Thank you. I want to take a moment and recognize our relationship and partnership with the NNI and Nelson Nash especially. I've had the pleasure of having a chance to sit down with Nelson. And as you said, Jenny, Nelson will speak from the heart. And that heart is, I think, where where we take our lead from as far as, recognizing that we have to try to do right by people. And so here's the deal. We recognize that there's an issue in our country as far as people not fully understanding what's going on with their own money and how the system doesn't necessarily work in their favor. And I also want to recognize the IBC practitioner program, Carlos Lara, Bob Murphy, David Stearns. You talk about a rigorous approach in making sure that people are practitioners, financial advisors, are as equipped as they can be in their understanding of the paradigm that we operate out of in this country and what might be a more effective paradigm to operate out of the infinite banking concept. So I know that we've learned a lot. I continue to learn a lot from these gentlemen, and I just want to extend that thanks, and to everyone else in the following, the IBC, NNI following, just an awful lot of value that they've been able to bring. And we're asking you really to consider joining our growing community of cooperative professionals working together. It's about the right thing from my perspective for what that's worth. I'm going to throw it back to Robbie for just a last closing comment, but hopefully today has given you some insight into another way to help people control more of their own money and some of the psychology behind the generational planning. And at the event, Jenny said, we'll dive deeper into some case studies. We'll talk a little bit more about the psychology of receiving money as an acquired gift or an inherited gift. So again, hopefully this has been helpful for you, and that you get the sense that we are trying to make a positive difference in the lives of people and create a win-win-win situation. So Robbie, I also want to thank you for joining us today. And it's always a pleasure for me to be able to sit
in a meeting with Robbie Shilley, the atmosphere that Robbie creates, the setting that Robbie creates, I think that probably came through today. So, Robbie, if there's anything else that you want us to be aware of before we sign off.
Tom, the stuff that we do is not rocket science. Some of you guys might be saying, hey, yeah, I get that. I do that. And maybe you do. But something I think we try to do is to be able to replicate that in meetings, whether we're there or not. And by creating the financial discovery or financial picture, by creating the generational planning exercise, systematizing that, doing that consistently in the meetings will lead to greater and greater referrals, and not only just any referral, but stronger referrals, because they're coming from a trusted friend or trusted family member. So it's not rocket science. It's just systematizing that in your book of business. Strongly encourage you guys to come out in November. Looking forward to seeing everyone. I noticed David Sturm's on the call. David, thanks for tuning in. Kim Butler. Hey, Kim, thanks for tuning in. For you guys that don't know Kim and Todd, they're a strong relationship, and they, the truth concepts there and strategic coach, they're real good guys. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, listening as well.
I am actually going to throw it back to Jenny for one more moment. But before I do that, just some of the resources
At Dennis Jaffe, Jaffee, Garrett Gunderson, James Hughes Jr., some of the people that have influenced our thinking. So, Jenny, you have something else
I do.
for us?
I do. Thanks, Tom. Robbie was kind of making light of the fact that this isn't rocket science. And I was quickly texting and trying to get a hold of somebody from our headquarters to send me this very high-tech 3-line thinking exercise that he's talking about for the generational planning. So Drew's going to try to post that here in a minute, just so you can kind of see how simple it is. And literally, this is really, really big stuff. So Drew, we're going to just hang tight there for a minute and it'll come up. But this is just an example of how a pad of paper and 3 simple lines and sensitivity and having just really sincere conversations can generate all kinds of value, not only for the clients, but also, for your business. So I think, Drew, can you scroll down a little bit at all? Or I think you guys can see a little bit of it. Bear with me. Oh, that's all we got. Okay, you know what? Email us if you want to see the rest of it. We're just going to hold you in suspense here for a little bit. All right, that's all I have.
For more information, you can go to freedomadvisorcrusade.com, and there'll be opportunities to study with us in an ongoing manner as well too, and we'll present that at the event as well too. So, one last comment about the scorecard. It's a great way to gain some insight into your own mindset as far as where you are right now and what might be possible as far as where you could take your practice and the value that you can bring to clients as well. So I want to thank Drew Murphy today for running our show today. Jenny, thanks again for the information. And it's freedomadvisorcrusade.com. And we hope to see you in November. We will have another teleseminar next Friday. I believe the date of that is November 4th at 10 a.m. And Drew will be sending out announcements for that. If you have ideas that are topics that you would like us to address on these teleseminars, we're certainly open to that. We look at everybody that joins us on these teleseminars as a partner. So, and again, like I said, from my perspective, I think we're really in it for the right reasons. We can create some great win-win-win scenarios for people. So thank you again for taking the time to join us, and we'd love to see you here in St. Louis in November.